Hi, everyone. So today we are going to start our new story, Airborn by Kenneth Apple. So I'd like you to take a moment to look at the cover of this story and think about what kind of book do you think this is going to be just by looking at the front cover. What genre might you be able to tell it is? So we're going to start off with a genre study. So, Kenneth Apple's book is a fantasy, which is an imaginative story that features characters and events that are not real. Some fantasies include elements of adventure with a quest to solve a mystery. Authors of fantasy tell the story through the plot, the main event of the story. The plot includes a conflict or problem and the resolution, or how the problem is solved. Fantasy stories include sensory details and figurative language to develop the setting and the characters. The events and places in fantasies might defy time or logic. So, right now, we're going to meet the author and illustrator. Kenneth Apple started writing science fiction stories when he was 12 years old. About 6 years later, he published his first novel. Now he is an award-winning author of novels for young adults. He says he gets his ideas from anywhere and everywhere. The illustrator of the story is Antonio Javier Capero, who is an award-winning illustrator, animator, and comic artist, whose works are featured in novels, books for children, and magazines, as well as print art collections and exhibitions. His art has been published in North and South America, as well as in Europe. So, our job today is going to be I can synthesize information to create new understanding. So, when we're synthesizing information, it means that we're bringing ideas from different parts and changing our understanding of something. So, when you synthesize, your thinking changes and you form new ideas. So, you start with what you know. At first, I was thinking because. Then, as you read, you start taking in information. Then you start thinking about what am I learning? When I was reading, I was thinking because. And when you put those two things together, it creates a new understanding. By the end, I was thinking, because. So today we're going to really start synthesizing our information. And one of the ways that I like to think of synthesizing is through our signposts. So taking in what we notice from the story and what we are thinking about as we're reading and creating a new understanding as we go. We're going to start by opening up our Into Reading book to page 89 so that we can begin Airborn by Kenneth Apple, illustrated by Antonio Javier Capero. Airborn. Matt Cruz is a cabin boy aboard the airship Aurora. The Aurora stays afloat using a gas called hydrium. One day, Matt spots a damaged sky balloon with an old man named Benjamin Malloy inside. Malloy has fallen ill and is rambling on about beautiful creatures he saw in the sky. With Malloy unable to communicate clearly, Matt and Malloy's granddaughter, Kate, have only his journal entries to guide them on their mission to figure out whether these flying creatures are real or imagined. So, as I read that first part of the story, the author is really trying to give us a context of what is going on. Why are people together? So, I'm going to take some information that I know. I can tell that Matt Cruz is probably going to be one of the main characters of our story, and that he is somehow come into contact with a person named Benjamin Malloy, who is some kind of captain of a flying ship called the Aurora. And I can also tell another main character is probably going to be Benjamin Malloy's granddaughter, Kate. And it seems like Matt and Kate are facing a conflict of trying to prove whether or not Benjamin Malloy is actually seeing these creatures or if he's just imagining them. So I can take what I understand that the author is trying to give me context for the story at the beginning and give me some background knowledge. And then I can take what I've read and I can synthesize that information to determine what the conflict of the story is going to be all about. We're on paragraph 2 now. So you can be reading along. We're on page 90 in your Into Reading books. So make sure that you have a pencil at the ready so that we can jot down some notes and ideas. Paragraph 2. The journal's spine was cracked and flabby, and there was a hair ribbon around the book, holding it all together. Moths danced around in my stomach as I climbed up to my bunk and stretched out. My cabin mate, Baz, was on crow's nest duty until 4. I turned on my reading lamp. I untied the ribbon and carefully turned back the cover. The pages were all scabby, as if the book had been soaked by rain and then baked in the sun. The pages were covered with small, neat lines of ink. Date, position, wind speed, altitude, observations. There was a little preface telling about how he, Benjamin Malloy, planned to do a complete west to east circumnavigation of the globe in his hot air balloon. I read quickly over these first pages, not because they weren't interesting, but because I could see Kate's bookmark up ahead, and it made my stomach feel swirly, wondering what was written there. It was hard to concentrate on the stuff beforehand. Kate's grandfather had started out in Cape Town to catch the jet stream and traveled quickly eastward over the Indian Ocean. But over Australia, his luck ran out, and he got shunted off course to the northeast. There was no sign of panic in his log. His days were busy with keeping the balloon shipshape, managing his supplies and provisions, taking weather readings and bearings. He described the countries and landscapes he was sailing over. Some days there were just coordinates and weather conditions. Other days he had lots to write about: birds, the changing light, the landscape of the passing nations beneath him, the creatures below the ocean's surface. He seemed interested in everything. I was keeping an eye on his coordinates and realized he was drifting along a flight path not too far off the Aurora's route from Sydney to Lionsgate City. With every day, his course veered more to the east as he tried to catch favorable winds at different altitudes. Not for the first time, I felt a sense of dread for him. I loved being aloft, but to be completely at the mercy of the winds, with no other means of power or steerage, it was a frightening thought. Obviously, Kate's grandfather had a stouter heart than mine. So, what I'd like you to do in your notes, I'd like you to think about what are some things that you just learned about our main character, Matt Cruz, so that we can look at the pictures. What are some things that you know about maybe where he is? What is the setting of the story? What's something that you're learning about him as a character? What do you think might be going on? So he's reading this person's journal of some sort. And we can tell that this journal is very worn and weathered based on the way that the author described it in paragraph 2. But I want to know, why do you think that this is happening? So we know that I was wrong in my synthesized information already. So it sounds like Benjamin Malloy had nothing to do with the ship, the Aurora. They must have somehow bumped into him or picked him up somehow. So it will be interesting to see how they came to find him. I lost track of how long I'd been reading. I was so caught up in the day-to-day journey. There weren't a lot of clues, but little bits of the man crept through. Even in his log, he liked watching the weather. He hated the tinned baked beans, but ate them because they were nutritious and portable. He enjoyed Shakespeare. He loved his granddaughter. He mentioned her often in his log. Must remember to tell Kate, he wrote, or will send Kate a postcard when I set down in Cape Town. With a start, I realized that Kate's bookmark was just a page turn away. I put the journal down, climbed off my bunk, and went down the corridor to the bathroom. At the sink, I splashed cold water on my face. Not that I was sleepy, it just seemed like the thing to do when you were up in the wee hours of the morning, reading the log of a strange, doomed voyage. Back in the cabin, I slid down into the warm furrow of my bunk and took a glimpse at the stars outside my porthole. With a deep breath, I picked up the journal and turned the page. September 2nd, 1523. An island in the distance, 171 minutes 43 seconds west, 221 seconds north, veiled in mist. Possibly volcanic given the cone-shaped silhouette it presents. It looks a tropical place with a crescent-shaped beach behind a green lagoon and densely forested. Slightly sighted two albatross foraging over the ocean, plucking fish and squid from the water's surface with their long hooked beaks. 1745. Closer to the island now. Huge flock of albatross in distance. Most unusual to see so many together. Perhaps island as nesting ground. Their color is odd, no dark coloration on their wingtips or bodies. Their plumage seems a misty white, so against cloud and sky, they are scarcely visible. Only when they are against ocean or the island can I make them out with any clarity. 1802. Not birds.